The Hobart Law of Object Permanence, Topological Invariance, Material Conservation, and the Fallacy of Chronological Sequence. Abstract. This paper formalizes the Hobart Law of Object Permanence, a non-temporal cosmological framework that reframes the universe as an invariant, multidimensional geometric manifold governed by absolute material conservation. Classical mechanics, special relativity, and quantum field theories rely on a fundamental temporal variable, t, to track vector trajectories, entropic decay, and state transitions. We demonstrate that time is not an intrinsic physical dimension, but a localized cognitive translation error, a biological heuristic developed by observers to process spatial phase alterations within a closed system. By elevating the first law of thermodynamics to its absolute spatial limit, we establish that the total mass energy of the cosmos is identical to its non-sequential geometric coordinate frame, expressed through the invariant identity, where m_text, total, represents the indestructible, constant sum of mass energy, and n_infty defines the unbounded, closed hyperspherical boundary of the permanent now. By replacing discrete, external entropic vectors with fluid topological phase transformations, this framework eliminates the need for temporal duration, historical memory logs, and cosmic initial or final conditions, resolving the paradoxes of cosmological beginnings and entropic endpoints. 1. Introduction: the biological heuristic and spatial misinterpretation. Human cognitive architectures and classical physical models are fundamentally constrained by temporal grammar: past, present, and future. This tripartite tense structure is an evolutionary artifact generated by biological organisms operating on planetary surfaces subject to rotational illumination cycles. To a localized carbon-based observer, kinetic rearrangement within an immediate sensory field is interpreted as the physical flow of an external dimension termed time. When evaluated from an absolute cosmological perspective, this chronological continuum collapses. The division of reality into past configurations and future potentials requires an external temporal container into which the universe moves. Because the cosmos encompasses the totality of existing space, energy, and matter, there is no exterior dimension into which it can transition, decay, or expand. Duration is therefore decoupled from fundamental reality. What biological observers perceive as the passage of time is merely the continuous, internal spatial rearrangement of matter across localized coordinates. The universe does not possess a chronological sequence. It is a single, static, multidimensional geometric structure undergoing continuous internal phase reallocation. 2. Mathematical formalization and topological invariance. In standard relativistic frameworks, state changes are calculated as differential derivatives with respect to time, dt. By treating t as a primary coordinate, classical and quantum equations inadvertently validate time as a physical medium. The Hobart law eliminates this redundancy by establishing that matter and energy do not traverse a temporal grid. Instead, mass energy is the structural framework itself. The foundational balance of the universe is defined by the invariant relation. In this formulation, m_text, total, is the fixed, scalar mass energy value of the universe, and n_infty represents the non-sequential, closed hyperspherical geometry of the permanent now. 2.1 The hyperspherical geometry of n_infty infinity is frequently mischaracterized as a linear ray extending toward an infinitely distant spatial or temporal boundary. Within the Hobart framework, n_infty is formalized as a four-dimensional hypersphere, S³. A hyperspherical boundary possesses a finite, strictly conserved volume, yet lacks any physical edge or external termination point. An observer moving across the surface of a hypersphere can travel indefinitely without encountering a boundary, renderable mathematically as unbounded access within a closed system. Consequently, n_infty does not represent an infinite duration of time stretching forward. It defines the immediate, static curvature of the system. Every coordinate point within n_infty acts as its own structural origin point. Infinity is not a future destination to be reached. It is the instantaneous topological surface upon which all physical state changes occur. 2.2 Erasure of the cosmic memory log. Because m_text, total, is an invariant constant bound to n_infty, the universe possesses no historical recording mechanism, external, undue buffer, or temporal record. The past does not exist in a distinct spatiotemporal sector, T1. What human observers classify as historical evidence, fossils, sediment layers, or red-shifted photons, are strictly present-state atomic arrangements existing entirely within n_infty. The universe retains no memory of previous structural states. There is exclusively the immediate, objective, kinetic configuration of its constituent physical matter. 3. Mechanics of the fluid cosmos. Closed topological phase transitions. A common objection to a non-temporal universe is the assumption that the absence of time implies a frozen, static state. The Hobart law resolves this by divorcing structural change from temporal duration. State modification does not require a timeline, it requires only spatial geometry and conservation-neutral energy redistribution. The universe operates as a closed, incompressible, multi-phase fluid sealed within the hyperspherical boundary of n_infty. Volumetric and mass invariance. Within a closed fluid continuum, no additional mass energy can be introduced, and no existing mass energy can escape the hyperspherical perimeter. Phase transformations versus chronology. Localized kinetic movement, atomic bonding, phase transitions, and structural decay are continuous density fluctuations within the fluid. A displacement of matter at coordinate F forces an immediate, equal, and opposite displacement across coordinate B. Under this fluid dynamic model, macroscopic phenomena such as biological life, stellar nucleosynthesis, or galactic movement are not sequential events occurring over time. They are structural assembly phases of the same invariant material value. An organism transitioning from an active biological state to a decomposed state is simply undergoing a local shift from a concentrated assembly phase to a dispersed assembly phase within the invariant fluid framework. The total value of m_text, total, remains absolutely unchanged. Entropic changes are simply topological strain relocations inside a closed container. 4. Cosmological boundary conditions. Singularities as topological coordinates. By applying absolute object permanence to the cosmic scale, the concepts of the Big Bang and ultimate heat death are stripped of their chronological implications. Standard cosmological models treat the initial singularity as a temporal zero point from which a cosmic clock began ticking. The Hobart calculus reframes the cosmological singularity not as a temporal beginning, but as a structural coordinate boundary. Consider the surface of a terrestrial sphere. The North Pole represents a coordinate boundary where the vector, north, terminates. Moving past the North Pole does not lead off the planet or into a pre-Earth void. It simply shifts the directional vector southward across the same continuous geometry. Similarly, the high-density state traditionally termed the Big Bang represents a geometric boundary condition of n_infty. Tracing atomic trajectories backward does not lead to a prior void or a temporal origin point. It leads to the high curvature structural edge of the invariant hypersphere. Every state of the cosmos, from maximum density configurations to maximum entropy distributions, exists simultaneously as part of a single, non-sequential mathematical object. The universe does not expand out of nothingness, nor does it decay into non-existence. All phase configurations are topographically bound to the same invariant scalar value, m_text, total, permanently present within n_infty. 5. Conclusion. The Hobart law of object permanence provides a mathematically consistent, non-temporal alternative to classical chronological physics. By replacing the independent temporal variable, t, with the structural identity m_text, total, equals n_infty, this framework eliminates the logical paradoxes associated with cosmic origins, temporal decay, and the flow of duration. The universe is demonstrated to be neither an expanding chronological narrative nor a frozen snapshot, but a closed, fluid, and permanently present hyperspherical structure whose internal configurations transform endlessly while its absolute total remains permanently invariant.